Welcome to the Freedom Blueprint Show, a podcast about creating the lifestyle you want through your small business. Drawing on their experiences starting and running multi-million-dollar small businesses, three friends, John, Ryan, and Gabe, discuss how to have a business, but more importantly, a lifestyle you love.
What's up, guys? We are going to talk about something super cool today, and that is a subject that I love, ROT, not ROI, not ROE, ROT, return on time. And I know, Gabe and John, maybe this means something different for you guys, but I'm actually excited to hear your guys' opinion on this. I know you guys all believe passionately in this idea. There's much more to life than just making money, right? There's this thing called time that we all have the same amount of, right? You, me, and Bill Gates, and me, and everyone else that has been successful have the same amount of time every day to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Different resources, but I think looking at what you get with the resources you have on your time is super important. I'll give you one example. You know, what I find is when I was in college, I always like to back up and then go forward. Gabe's always like, what the hell are you talking about? Can we get to the point? When I was in college, I got my first B the year that I took 12 hours of school and no work because I wanted to focus on school. I got straight A's when I took 18 hours of school and worked almost full time. And the more limited time I have, the more efficient and better I am. And I just love that concept of, that part of return on time. And, my wife does it to me now. Like, she gets the kids signed up in sports and they have to be there by 3:30 or 4. And she's like, I need you home to help drive people around. Well, my day's cut short. So I've got to be more efficient with my time during the day. Right. So let's kick it off just kind of talking about what return on time means to you guys. And I don't know if you have any questions or comments on what I said, but, that's something, is finding efficiency with your time is, I think, super important.
I agree with that. I mean, I certainly agree with the idea that work or whatever you're doing generally expands to the amount of time that you have allocated to it, right? That's like, there's a name to it. It's some sort of principle, they call it. So right. That is absolutely true. And that's difference in lifestyle too. Obviously, like you with the family, you have a good reason to have a really clear delineation between your work life and your home life as well, which can be nice. It can be sometimes you probably rather just be working sometimes, but a lot of times it's probably really nice. Whereas me, without that, and especially with the pandemic and working from home and stuff like that, I can always be working. And to a lot of extent, I kind of should always be working as well, just because the highest and best use of my time, a lot of times, it isn't going to be playing pickleball or watching TV or even reading a book necessarily. A lot of times it's just getting my shit done, getting work done, because this can be cash flow then that I have 2, 3, whatever thousand more dollars coming in because I buy another property, so it can be tough sometimes to not do that and just relax and shut it off.
Makes sense. Gabe, what do you think?
You actually made me think about it differently. We had a conversation about this a few months ago. I don't know if you remember, but when I had first thought about it, and you were one of the first people who actually brought the concept to my brain. And I was like, return on time. What happened? John
or me? Sorry, when you say you.
You, Ryan. So I was thinking return on time, and I was playing with it in my head. And for me, I was just thinking about well, how do I get the most out of the time that I have? I was just thinking efficiency and kind of what's the word, mechanistically from the time. Whereas then we had a conversation. You're like, well, I don't even look at it that way. I look at it from am I thoroughly does the task actually give me energy? Is what I'm doing actually bring me life? And I'm like, I love that. So for me, that's how I like to look at it the most, because there are things you think that are going to make you a ton of money and then they don't pan out, and then vice versa. Sometimes there might be things you don't think they're going to make you money and they actually do. But every time you're focused on the money part, sometimes I feel like we're too focused on the outcome and not in the actual process in and of itself.
Would it be fair to say, Gabe, that the time part of that equation is the efficiency, the return part of that equation is your energy and happiness?
Say it again.
So there's two parts of the return on time equation. It's how efficient can you be with your time, but the return part of it is what value are you getting from it? And that's the part you're talking about, is the energy.
Right. Is the energy part. And, there's only so much, like, I don't know, because like I have a friend, right? He's like, and he boasts like, I only work like 2 hours a week, and now the other day he was promoting how he's only working 15 hours, 15 minutes a day. And I'm like, what do you do? Like, I don't understand. Like, how does that even, like, I can't even, like, I just can't even fathom that, because I'm like, dude, like, for me, like, what do you define as work, I guess, is another word, right? Like when I'm out like reading, like, and I'm reading a book, for me, that's work. But like, I love that shit. Like, I can read an hour or 2 hours a day, and I'm like absorbed. I get lost, and I love that. And for me, that's a big return on time, because reading makes me, makes my brain work better. It makes me more knowledgeable. It gives me better ideas, and then it helps me bring things back to the team and to the company to improve. So I guess it, depends on what you define, but I really like the energy aspect of it, because I feel like if what I'm doing is giving me energy, everything will work itself out, versus like, if what I'm doing is efficient, it may make money, but if I fucking hate it, like, it's not sustainable,
That's a bad return on your time. That's the return side of it that I agree people missed out on that equation, but it goes to the task level. But for me, when I talk about that efficiency and how efficient I need to get when I have a shorter period of time to accomplish a lot of tasks, some of my return had not only to do with the task if I enjoy it, but the fact that I was able to complete what I needed to get done in an efficient amount of time. And that feels valuable. Where when I feel like I procrastinated and I didn't get done what I needed to get done because I allowed interruptions, I allowed things to happen, I leave with less energy.
Yeah.
Or disappointment in myself or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I get energy too. Like, if I, from an example, like if I do a real estate deal or whatever, I do some type of transaction, then it's like, man, if I get these two things closed, like, it would have took me this amount of time, and I'll make like what I made more all last year, as an example, like from just doing these 2 or 3 things, So that's also like super cool, because that's the efficiency part, where it's like, hey, you're being more, more useful with your time, I guess.
And Ryan, your good feelings, I would guess, come not only from the satisfaction of having used your time efficiently and effectively, but then I would imagine there's also the component of how much you intrinsically enjoyed or didn't enjoy what that task was. Is that fair to say?
That's what I was trying to say. What Gabe's saying, but it's also and that's a personality thing. Maybe that might not be the same for everybody. Like, I loved in college when I had to write a 15-page paper. And that sounds stupid, but I love the idea of sitting in front of a blank piece of paper and then finishing it at the very end and handing it in after doing redrafts or whatever I needed to do, right? And just that like project and accomplishing something. Like, I enjoy finishing and accomplishing hard things. So I've learned that about myself. So when I set myself tasks and goals during the day, when I can accomplish those, I get a lot of energy from just the idea of accomplishing it.
Right. How much does the task itself matter to you? How much you like or don't like the task?
A ton. And I think every person listening here, whether you're an employee or a COO or CEO, and I suggest you do this exercise with people in your organization. Like, write down what you do minute by minute or day by day on a daily basis and audit it. 1, is that even your freaking job description? Are you doing other people's jobs, right? 2, how much do you enjoy doing those things? And how do you do more of the things you enjoy and offload the things that you don't enjoy doing?
Right.
And that's huge. I mean, that gets down to the task level, right? And that's a very tough thing to do. But, I'm interviewing people for this new company I'm buying. And my question to the employees is, I want you to come back to me with a list of what your defined job role is versus what you actually do. And then I want you to come back to me with a list of how many got-a-minute meetings you go through a day. How many times are you getting interrupted during the day? And then I want you, so it's all those factors, in my opinion, comes down to what Gabe said. It's that energy and the return on time feeling, and the value that you get from the time you spend is diminished by got-a-minute meetings. It's diminished by doing tasks that you shouldn't be doing or don't enjoy doing.
And sometimes, like, it's hard to put a dollar amount behind all the things that you do sometimes, right? Like it's 2 simple examples is like meditation and exercise. Like, we know that all high performing people do that, right? But it doesn't actually make you money in the direct sense of the word or make you profit, but it makes you better at what it is you're going to go do for the most part. So when I go exercise and I go outside and do a HIIT session for 20, 30 minutes, when I'm done with that, I have way more energy and focus to go do what I have to do. Plus I know I'm going to, I'm running a marathon. I'm going to be in this for 30, 40, 50 years. So like, I'm not trying to get to some place like faster than somebody else is. I'm just trying to go as long as I can, as healthy as I can. We just had a webinar call the other day with Richard Branson, by the way. And I think he said he was 78. I don't know if if I understood that correctly. And the dude looks so fit and healthy. And he was just talking about how he was just playing tennis this morning and running. And he was talking about like one of his major hacks is he's like, I got to move all time. He's like, I'll go work for 2 hours and then I'll go do something fun for like 20, 30 minutes or whatever to just get my energy. And you could just see from like how, his body, his physique, his like state, his energy. I'm like, man, like 78 and to be in that state, I'm like, that's amazing,
Yeah, and he's known, I think Tony Robbins, he did that Money Master the Game book or whatever. We interviewed like 100 plus people. And I think he said that Richard Branson was one of the happiest of all those people. So, I mean, in terms of what's your measure of success, being the happiest is probably a pretty good one.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think Ryan, like what you were saying, you were talking about the satisfaction you get from completing the task is part of the return on the time, right? You get that satisfaction. Another part of it is how much that you actually enjoy what it is that you're doing. Some things you're going to like more than other things. Another component I would probably argue, and maybe you guys would agree, is obviously like how impactful that task is, like financially, right? To like your business, whatever. And then probably another one would be how impactful it is to others, if that is a priority of yours, which sometimes it may be and other times it may not, as you're progressing as an entrepreneur.
Right.
That's probably another one,
Yeah. And those, Gabe, you're a father, as a father, like I think about impacting others, like there's nobody better person I can impact than my kids, right? Like when you talk about legacy and that you get into that level of conversation, like I want to leave a legacy behind. Well, your children are part of your legacy, right? And, there's this big argument between quantity and quality time. And I think the answer is both. Like, I think children need both of them. It's not just one or the other, right? They need good quality of quantity, if that makes sense.
Right.
I'm going to just
you can't get the quality if you don't have enough quantity, basically.
Yeah. Like, just like, hey, I spent 30 minutes with my kid. All right, now go get on your Game Boy. We had really good quality time, right? But the quantity wasn't there. Like we're doing no screens for 30 days.
Yeah, I've seen your wife post about it.
It is a night and day difference when it just kind of like time and how you spend your time. It's crazy to me. We talked about, watching Netflix or watching movies and just how we spend our time, right? On our phones and how much time we spend on our phones and our devices. Like it's crazy to me how much my children's behavior changed by not having screens. And I think as human beings, as adults, and as business owners, I think it's the same thing. Like, how many times have you been in meetings with people where they're on their phone, texting and emailing while you're having a conversation with them?
It's so annoying. I hate it.
It's the worst, right? And like, it's just like how we spend our time and where we put our time, like it impacts other people.
Yeah. So on to what you were saying about the no screen time, because I'm interested and curious. Is it, are you guys leading by example?
My wife's doing amazing.
Okay.
I still sneak and try to watch the basketball game or the football game or something, and I'm still got the addiction I'm working on.
Got it. Okay.
And how are your kids holding up with it? Was it a big struggle at first?
I mean, maybe for the first day, but it transitioned really fast. Like, dude, we used to get in the car and Gabe, like, I don't know if you have this with your kids or just my kids that are crazy. And it was like, Dad, phone, Mom, phone.
Yeah, we have it.
No, we need the phone. Not phone. And just like nonstop until you give me
an addiction.
Shut up, take the phone.
We cut it off. I mean, we haven't gone extreme like cold turkey, none, but like he gets restricted use. And like if he starts acting up with it, like if we say, hey, it's time to eat dinner and he doesn't like respond, I'll say, hey, if you don't go to dinner, I'm going to take it away for a few days. And then sometimes we'll do that where we'll take it away for 2, 3, 4 days so he can learn his lesson or whatever. But
Becky said to Rylan on Sunday, hey, do you want to play on your Xbox or do you want to come jump on the trampoline with Mom? And he said, jump on the trampoline with Mom. And that was like, whoa.
That's awesome.
I mean, she gave him the opportunity to play on his Xbox to like test him. And he said, jump on the trampoline. Like our kids would they don't realize it, but let me give you this example, Gabe, to answer it. This is what scares me. Our kids are young. I got stopped behind the bus. They put the little stop sign. I was behind the bus, right? And it was a middle school bus. It was just yesterday. And 3 kids get off. They all kind of go similar directions, but not walking together. I mean, one of them was in the freaking bike lane on the major road. And all of them are walking like this the whole time with their head down, looking at their phone. All 3 of them, not talking to each other, just walking out. I mean, she's on the freaking main road, not even looking where she's going.
Dude, that's one of the leading causes of deaths is actually like people not like crossing streets, like with like not like on looking at their phone or like listening to music and not like hearing the cars. They get hit by cars.
The dangers of walking with a phone, like they're not socializing, they're not talking together, they're freaking so like this the whole time, like which is not good for your posture. Like, I mean, who knows what they're looking at, right? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. So like, where we spend our time, even as business owners, like what we spend our time doing, how much time we're spending on our phone and not interacting with our people, right? I think we rely on technology way too much, and we don't, slack, right? We rely on just communicating through technology and not actually the human interaction that people need.
Even on the phone, man, like I wrestle with it, and it's hard it's not easy for me. I have to really place attention and focus on it. But like, it's very easy for me when I'm on the phone with someone and we're talking on the phone for me to like go to Facebook. And I notice, all right, Gabe, you're not being present. Like, how can you be on Facebook and then listen to what this person has to tell you? And I have to like put myself back in, all right, shut off the Facebook, close it so I can like fully be present for that conversation. And then I'll get to it later or whatever. But it's not easy. It literally is an addiction, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, what were you going to say, Ryan?
No, go ahead, John. I have a comment, but go ahead.
Well, make your comment. Actually, I was going to kind of slightly change the subject.
So I'll just change the subject then. In meetings, when you guys do your level 10 meetings and group meetings, do you allow people to look at text and respond to text and jump out for phone calls and stuff like that?
In our quarterlies, I don't. In our quarterlies, I tell everybody I want them 100% present. I probably should say that in my weeklies and be a little bit more on point with it. But for the most part, when we get to like our issue or opportunity section, when the weekly, like no one's really for the most part doing that in the beginning of it. But when we get to that problem, I typically just tell everybody like, look, if this problem doesn't pertain to you, just jump off. Like, we don't need you in the meeting, So that way we kind of avoid that as much as we can.
For us, I mean, we're virtual, so I can't really, I can tell them, hey, don't do it, but I have no way of monitoring it. And I don't want to be too dictatorial anyways, but it probably would be good just to suggest to them, hey, like, please just kind of focus and be present. But yeah, I can't monitor it nearly as closely.
But you can see it. I mean, when you're in virtual meetings, like you can see your people on the phone or looking down or.
Oh yeah, if I saw that, I'd yell at them. That's not allowed. Like, just like when people don't have their webcams on or something, it's like, turn your fucking webcam on. Like,
I hate when people don't have their webcams on.
Yeah, it's not allowed.
When we have a meeting.
Yeah,
well, sometimes I'll do it like if I'm going to use the bathroom or something, but I always say like, hey guys, I'm going to the bathroom, so webcams.
I'm going to the bathroom right now.
Yeah. So if I saw somebody with their head down or whatever, yeah, I'd be like, no. Because I have pretty firm like rules, like I'm sure you guys do too. With your teams, like they're just rules that like you just ain't gonna cross. Like that's just unacceptable. That's probably one of them.
So I do that when I'm in meetings with people. And they get on their phone and they're like typing and doing stuff. I will stop talking until they're done.
I like it.
And it's like, no, and I'm happy to keep going. But it just seems so rude to me when they're in the middle of a conversation and they're going like this on their phone.
Yeah, right? Totally.
People do it all the time out of habit.
So back to return on time for a sec. So I want to ask you two guys questions. So it seems like presence is also a big factor on return of time, right? Like how do you can do the same, two people can do the same exact thing, but actually get a totally different return on that time.
Yeah, the quality of that time.
Yeah, the quality of the time. But two questions I got for you guys, which I'm sure other people would have, right? Both of you have 7-figure businesses. Ryan, you got multiple 7-figure businesses, and you both have had a degree of success.
Ryan, get off your phone.
What are the things that what are the things that you feel have given you your greatest return on time to get you to the levels that you're at today?
Definitely delegating, learning how to delegate properly. and getting things off my plate. And when people have questions about the things I've delegated to them, is challenging them to find an answer and being okay with them making mistakes.
So learning first about delegation, or just learning in general, and then giving more and more to people. So basically hiring as well, hiring and recruiting people would be part of that.
Yeah, I'd suggest people to go read Clockwork, chapters 2 and chapter 5. It's really, really good on delegating. But being able to hire good people, pay them the right amount of money, people that can think, that are resourceful. So we have a core value that's resourceful in my organization. And, people that are resourceful and can find answers on their own, and they don't rely on other people to do their job, and they can think, super important to me.
I'm writing that to my book list, Clockwork.
Yeah, Clockwork's really good. Yeah, like for me, I feel like I'm using my time the best in terms of tactically getting the most out of my time. This is a little different than like, what do I enjoy or not enjoy? But tactically is when I'm delegating, like Ryan said, like when all day, basically all that I'm doing is just like forwarding emails and assigning people shit to do in Asana, and maybe going back and checking and seeing if those things that I assigned previously were done. Like that is at this point the bulk of what my day is. And anytime I'm not doing that, anytime I'm actually being a doer, like I am calling, like a plumber or something, or I'm doing something else that I'm like, why am I doing this? I try to take the extra 5 or 10 minutes if needed to write a process out or some sort of instruction, or record a quick screen share or something on how to do this, so that I never have to do that sort of thing again. So kind of every day I'm trying to whittle down how many things I'm actually doing so that I can delegate more.
I hate the idea that it's okay to be a firefighter and that's what a manager does. You're a firefighter. Like that is such a bad culture concept.
Yeah. I think as a manager, it's one thing, but certainly not as a CEO. You know what I mean? Like definitely not as a CEO, you wouldn't want to be that. Like maybe as like a frontline manager, maybe sometimes you have to do some of that, but not be a firefighter. Certainly, I agree. But certainly the CEO, I think you want to do, if you're ever doing that, then you probably need to figure out how you're able to delegate that.
You're just an employee. You're not a worker. You're not you're not an owner at that point, in my opinion.
So you see yourself, John, would it be safe to say you see yourself more of like an orchestrator to a degree? You're just kind of orchestrating the band, making sure the band's doing what they got to do to play along.
Exactly.
So
and
where does that fall into your business?
Satisfaction.
Where does that fall into your business though? Because you have your guy that pretty much runs things. So I would think that he would be doing a lot of that to a certain degree.
I probably so I do all the orchestration on marketing and strategy and HR and finance basically. And he does it, and he does it on sales.
He's mostly just running sales. So you're still in charge of a couple departments in your business. Got it.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And the other thing too that I find, to your question, that like where I feel like I'm making the best use of my time is also when I'm hiring, when I'm interviewing, when I'm reviewing resumes.
I love interviewing people. I love that.
Yeah. Because you just know if you do it right and you get the right person, that's going to be a whole nother chunk of things that you can delegate. You know what I mean? So it's just, for me, it's just a continual process of delegating more and more and more and more until you get to the point where that's all you're doing is just delegating. And then I guess that's where the COO or second in command person comes in, and eventually you delegate the delegating to them ideally. And you're just kind of checking up on that.
Right.
But one thing I struggle with though is the enjoying the shit that I'm doing. Like in mobile home parks, for example, which is my big focus right now, where I spend a lot of my time. Most of the shit that I'm doing, I don't like that much, which is not ideal. Like I'm doing the sales calls with the park owners because if I get a deal, it could be worth $500,000 or whatever.
And I think that's what Gary Vee says, you got to eat shiz for a while and when you start something, right? Like you're just starting that business, and unfortunately you have to wear all the hats.
Right.
It's hard to start a business.
And I don't know. Maybe there is. I don't know if I don't know if any of us are on this level, but I wouldn't think so. But I don't know if there is even a level of where you're only doing like everything that you absolutely love and fires you up. I think always there's always going to be something that you don't like to do that you're just going to have to do. And I don't think the goal is I think it's an unreasonable goal to not do any of it at all. But I think if you're doing 80 to 90% of your time on that, you're doing really, really, really well,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Like I would be. I wonder if that is achievable. Like somebody like Richard Branson, he's probably too extreme. But like, are they really only ever doing stuff that they like? Like they're never finding themselves doing monotonous or drudgery or just stuff they just otherwise don't enjoy. Like I wonder if that. I think that's not a bad North Star to try to go to. But to your point, I don't know if it's really achievable. I mean, I don't know.
It's
Ryan,
not
what
black
your
and
thoughts
white.
on that?
You gotta enjoy dealing with some firefighting that happens, right? Like the server goes down and you've got to get involved to make a decision and it sucks and you're stepping in to help, like whatever, right? There's just parts of it, like maybe you don't enjoy it, but you got to learn as the owner to say, I don't enjoy that. Oh well. I mean, that's what Gabe, I think, is saying, is sometimes you got to sweep the floors and you got to be willing to do that.
Sometimes you got to do it. I mean, I know, like, for example, Branson, to your point, they got their asses kicked now with COVID. I mean, they got crushed with COVID on many businesses because they got into the whole cruise line industry. They're in airlines, like, and he was talking about they got their asses kicked. So I'm sure he was having to do a lot of shit that he didn't really want to do during those times, you know?
Right. But that's, it's probably safe to kind of separate that a little bit where it's like crisis, probably like you're saying, Ryan, any business owner in a crisis, they're going to have to, and they're going to want to, step in and try to like patch the giant hole that sprung in their ship. But I just wonder, like in normal times on their day to day, I don't know how achievable it is. I just wonder if that is the right North Star to shoot for, to just want where like you only are doing stuff you like.
Sure. You got to pay the right people the right amount of money to get to that point.
Right.
So,
Dan Sullivan says he does, yeah, he's the only person I think I've heard him say, but I don't know how true that is, but he says he does. But I like what Buffett says. And that's like, if I can get to that, I think that's the top thing to shoot for is what he talks about. He's like him and Munger, they tap dance to work every day, So I'm like, man, if I'm tap dancing to work every day, I don't give a fuck. Like, even if I have to do some shit occasionally that I don't like to do, like as long as I thoroughly enjoy mostly everything else I'm doing, and I'm spending most of my time on that, then I know I'm on the right track.
We've all heard that analogy of like the banker from New York that goes down and he goes out on the fishing boat and spends some money to go out on the guy's fishing boat. And you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like, he's like, I could teach you how to run 20 boats and run this huge business, and I come from this background, and so you could take some time off and do what you love. He's like, I am doing what I love every day.
He's like, for what? And the guy's like, oh, because we're going to go to the bar and play guitar with our friends and like just spend all the time doing like songwriting. And he's like, I'm already doing that now.
Yeah. So I think there's some of that too. You got to be careful with when you're like grinding, right? And you're grinding to grind to get to this future. Like, define what happiness means for you and really understand it. Like that's something you should really spend time defining. Like, find the time to define it, first of all. Second of all, shoot towards, so you said North Star, that's what came into my mind, John, is like have some kind of goal of definition of happiness, whether it's being debt free and owning a second home that your kids can grow up in. Like, I don't care what it is, or being able to, like, for me right now, it's like being able to afford private lessons and have the time to spend with my kids and watch them grow in sports. Like, that's a huge focus of mine right now, right? Outside of the financial freedom that I've achieved. So just define that happiness and work towards it. And once you've achieved it, like, you don't have to keep grinding to get there.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important to be honest too. Like Gabe tap dancing to work. I'm not tap dancing to work to run a wholesaling business, and I'm not tap dancing to work running a mobile home park or even self-storage or whatever commercial property business. Like, that does not jazz me up. That does not like really enrich me. That does not make me super happy intrinsically. So
like
that's like a problem.
Maybe there's some soul searching you have to do.
Yeah, I do. And, and I'm falling into some extent of the classic trap that, we advise everybody not to really fall into, of just, I'm sort of just making really strong progress against certain goals that really just further fortify freedom and autonomy and stuff for myself in the future to give me that flexibility. But I think probably with that, how I'm rationalizing it to myself is like, yeah, maybe it's for 6 months or another year or something like that. It's not for 20 years, till I'm like 60 or something. So, it is a short-term sacrifice a little bit.
I would definitely, and I'm okay with sacrifice for short periods of times to achieve a bigger goal. I would just define it and hold yourself to it, right? Or have accountability partners like us that'll help you do that. I mean, you guys really got on my case when it came to me investing a bunch of time in these new businesses I'm buying recently. And is that worth the return on your time? Is really a question you guys were asking me. Like, you've achieved so much, why not just live your life that you want to live? And for me, it's like, I've got this financial freedom and I've been able to put that aside and lock it away so nobody could touch it. And it's always going to be there, if that makes sense. And I've got the cash flow and everything. Well, now with the extra time I have, I'm going to drive myself crazy, drive my wife crazy, and drive my kids crazy if I'm around all the time. Right. So they would prefer that I'm out doing something else. So the new ventures I'm doing is not putting my nest egg at risk. It's just taking some cream on top of the pie and investing in a new, fun, exciting thing that I'm excited to go and grow and do that keeps me excited.
Yeah. You're excited about it and you enjoy it, which it sounds like John's not excited about it. So I think there's some there for you, John.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And yeah, and that's what I was challenging, Ryan about too, which, as long as that is truly, genuinely the most fulfilled and happy thing that he can think of for himself, just personally, which is just an internal thing, which he said it is. And then that's awesome. I just do I fear for some people, and not Ryan necessarily, but people who have achieved, others that I know have achieved full financial freedom, is like, a lot of times they just sort of end up de factoing, falling into just a pattern of doing. They're just in a pattern of doing, and they're sort of just, when the one thing they do is done, they're sort of starting the next thing. They're starting the next business or the next venture or the next whatever, just because, well, I don't know what the hell else I do. I think I'd be kind of bored,
Kind of doing without like intention, basically.
Yeah. And what I challenge those people with, and I haven't done a lot of that self-exploration myself, what I challenge them with is like, be bored. Like, be fucking bored for a couple months, 2-3 months, maybe 6 months. Be willing to be bored and see what bubbles to the surface for you. See how your priorities realign themselves. And maybe they realign themselves the exact same fucking way as before. And you come back and you're like, hey, I did the soul searching. I took the distance away. And that's it, man. That's for me. It's like businesses, baby, until I'm 90. I want to keep building businesses. Fuck yeah. Go rock on. But
it's hard for entrepreneurs to do that because they're wired into achievement and to their identity. Like, so if they're not achieving, it's like, who are they?
Exactly. Well, and that's what I fear that some people fall into.
With you and I being married and having kids, it's even harder. Like, let's assume you're at complete financial freedom and you don't have to work another day in your life. I know, Gabe, you'd find a lot of ways to do yoga and garden or whatever.
Yeah, but that's like that only makes up like that only. How much time realistically can you spend on that in a day?
Well, here's my question, and I know my wife wouldn't be okay with this, and I explained this to John. Would your wife be okay, especially during the summer when the kids aren't at school, dealing with the kids all day long while you're out gardening and yoga and going on hikes every day? Like, at some point she's going to say, can you stop screwing around and having fun and help me?
She already does that now. like she's like, you wake up and you like read and you drink your coffee and you do your thing and like, you don't care about anybody else. I'm like, it's my morning routine,
You get my point, Gabe. If you exasperate that, it would just make your wife more unhappy, right?
Yeah.
So that, I'm at a season in my life where my kids are young and it's a hard time of life, John. Like, when all three of them are together, like, it is hard for my wife. So if I was around that more, my wife would just naturally push a kid or two onto me, and my whole life would just revolve around raising kids, which is like, I would annoy them in a weird way.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to do with what season you are in your life, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll always have to do something. I have to keep myself entertained and busy, and I have to be growing and evolving. And like, that's when I feel like I'm at my best. But like, to the return on time equation, one thing I noticed for me that really, I think the two biggest things for me is learning and thinking. Like, when I'm learning, I feel really, really good. And I'm like inspired and motivated. And like, I just feel like I'm at my best when I'm learning. And then thinking, I feel, is one of those things too, where like, that's where like real breakthroughs can happen, where sometimes you just sit with a problem for like an hour and pen and paper and just, think about it and figure out different ways to attack it, or think about a new problem in a whole different way, or a new opportunity, or get strategic. And I feel like sometimes just spending an hour or 2 hours thinking can create like a huge breakthrough. And I think it's even more true. Like, the more leverage you have in your business, like probably the more truer that becomes too,
Right.
So the takeaways for me from this episode is, take the time to define your happiness. And then also what you're saying, Gabe, is do a self-audit. And John, you also kind of hinted at this, do a self-audit and be honest with yourself. If you're coming home drained every night, you need to audit yourself and figure out why, and make sure that the tasks you're doing and the way you set up your day is giving you the return and the energy. I mean, I'm at my best when I'm like, I don't want to sleep because I'm just so excited and I'm just loving life, right? Like I'm having fun, and going to sleep is boring. And, I'm at my best for that. And it's the energy. I feel the energy, right? I don't need an energy drink to get me going. I just have the natural excitement of the day. So, guys, I think this is amazing. I think it's a topic that I think a lot of people will get value out of. Have you gotten a call from Ryan yet at 4 a.m., John?
I think I've trained him to just not really call me at all anymore. I think he just knows the chance of me picking up are so low.
So if you send me $1,000, I'll give you John's phone number.
For me, I'm the opposite. So you mentioned like coming home drained. I think of it the opposite, where I'm like, am I waking up excited? So like if I'm waking up like excited for the day, especially the transition from the weekend, like Sunday to Monday. Like if I know that I'm happy on, like it's Monday's coming and I'm happy for it, like I know I'm doing something right,
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. Like there's Saturdays and Sundays, like when is Monday going to come around? I'm excited to start getting back to these projects and working on stuff. But it's been a good episode, guys. We need to wrap it up. But thanks for your time. Let's rock it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Peace.
Yeah.